This podcast is supported in part by Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization that advocates for ideas, policies, and values to build a stronger North Carolina that works for all its people as a strong, diverse, multiracial democracy. For more on them, visit carolinaforward.org.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We have so much stuff. There's so much stuff going on in North Carolina. I feel like it comes in waves. Like sometimes there's so much stuff happening that it's hard to keep up with. But because of that, I think that we should talk about fun stuff first.
I am on board with that. I feel like that is very connected to our Give Us Bread, but Give Us Roses too conversation from a
Yes.
previous recent episode. And I will say, hey, I'm Liz and that's Gina. But yeah, let's talk about that new, fluffy, delightful, poppy, The Life of a Showgirl.
Have you listened to it?
Specifically in preparation for this podcast, I had it on repeat like all day Friday.
Okay.
And part of that is also because like I am a religious Spotify listener, and therefore like the connecting the title of the song and the lyrics to the song are like is not always something that I do when I am listening to music. And I was like, I want to remember like the lyrics that go with each of these songs and which ones I like and which ones I'm like meh about.
Yeah.
I think I really liked like half of it and I'm like solidly meh about half of it.
Okay.
How are you feeling?
About the same. I
Okay.
am a Swiftie. I love her. I also was not into this album. It's not for me. A lot of the
What
production
are the albums
is not
that were
me.
for you?
Okay, so my Taylor Swift origin story is around the album Red, because Taylor Swift and I are the same age. And when 22 came out, I was also 22. And so I was like, okay, like I'd been a music elitist for my whole life and was reading Paste magazine when I was 12. Like I had a lot of identity wrapped up in being like pretty elitist about music and not listening to pop music or not listening to the radio, except for public radio. And when that song came out, I was like, this song is so fun. Like, I'm also 22. I get this. Like, I am going out and doing 22-year-old things and having a great time, and songs about it are fun and cute. And then I saw this quote from Jeff Tweedy, who I've told you about before. He's the front man of Wilco. And he talks about how Dancing Queen was his turnaround moment where he was like, why have I been denying myself fun? Because I thought it wasn't cool to like fun songs. So he was like, now when I listen to music and I think I don't like this song, I make myself sit with it and think about really if I like or don't like it and not just let myself be reactionary to it. So years before I read that quote, I had that moment with Taylor Swift where I was like, why am I such a hater? This is so fun and cute and fluffy. And I need that. I don't need to only be listening to like fucking Yola Tango, very moody stuff, right? I'm protective and defensive of her because of that. And I also felt like this album kind of sucked.
That's okay. You can feel that way. I also honestly think, I think she's an artist, clearly, and a really solid and prolific songwriter. I also think that, some people make better art when they're not happy in love. And she's happy in love. And I also love that for her. And I think that was clear in this album in a number of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's cute,
so happy.
but sorry, go ahead.
And I love that. And I want her to be happy. But I'm for sure a folklore Evermore girly. I'm a lyrics-based girly. I don't love a lot of pop production. And this album is full of that for sure.
I felt like this album was a blend of the Lovers sound and the Midnights sound. Midnights, I think of all the poppier albums that she's done, that one's definitely the top one for me.
Same.
I too am a folklore and Evermore girly. I remember being so impressed that she put out 2 albums in the year of 2020 when we were all having global and individual crises and obviously she's got a fuck ton of financial and white and pretty privilege, like fully, but also really hard to make that much art when you have that much, like when you have the level of global stress that we were all experiencing. And I just think it's really impressive that she did. And they were so beautiful. And I love that that aesthetic is so much more me than like the life of a showgirl sparkly orange aesthetic.
Yes, for sure. But I loved Midnights. I also really like Lover.
Okay.
But I think for a nostalgic reason, like I'll get really hyped to Paper Rings, but it's not like a traditional Gina jam. It just like is a happy cutie song.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely is one of the few songs that stands out to me on that album in particular. I know you were like not super into this album, but were there any songs on it that you were like, yeah, I fuck with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Eldest Daughter for sure the like standout one to me. I also like I don't hate some of the like on their face dumber ones. Like I don't hate Wood. I think that shit's funny. And like also Get It Girl, like I love that for her. I just don't I don't think any of them really stood out to me as ones that I was like, yes, I cannot wait to go back to this. And sometimes like the Elizabeth Taylor one, I was like, "Oh, I really want to love this song because I love when she does that." She has a song about her house, Holiday House in Rhode Island, and about like the history of the house and the woman who lived there. And like, I love when she does that. I love when she's like, "Hey, like generations of young girls, learn some feminist history with me about interesting women." But even that one, I was like, "All right, I'm trying really hard here, and this is just not my vibe." I don't know. What did you think?
So I liked that one. That is one that I have downloaded, put on a playlist that I kind of
Okay.
regularly listen
Okay.
to. I think this other song falls into the category of dumb, but I really enjoyed it. The canceled one beat into it, like lyrics,
Okay.
but the sound is good. I so Read the Eldest Daughter one, my like good friends poetry group, we were like, I was like, how do we feel about like this as a group Halloween costume? Because I can imagine some very cute like outfit plus wolf ears.
Oh, the song
Yeah.
being the costume? Fun. Oh, I love that. That's really cute.
So I think that is I think that's what I'm gonna do for Halloween this year because I'm like trying this thing in my little local town where I'm like, I'm dressing up as something I already am. Last year it was a witch just to fuck with people. And this year I think it's gonna be an eldest daughter from Taylor Swift, and it is bringing me amusement, and that is what matters because this is.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. That's really cute.
And then I was into The Life of a Showgirl. Not like immediately, like it took me a couple of listens, but I like kept basically like I put songs on playlists when after listening to them, I'm like, ooh, I want to listen to that again, or I want to know I can find it again. And so
Mhm.
that was I think like it scooted on in as like one I wanted on a playlist that I could find.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I liked that one for sure. I wanted to like The Fate of Ophelia, which also is her giving a history lesson and like a classic lit lesson. Sometimes she'll do like a really good reference pull. And my like most fervent hope is that everybody who was like 12 years old when Tortured Poets Department came out is like running to Spotify to look up Patti Smith because she references like the Chelsea Hotel and the shit that like really defines what I care about musically. And it's so cool to see her do that. Um, so I like by proxy like The Fate of Ophelia
Mm.
because I think the intention is cool.
But the sound of it was not I really wanted to like it too. I agree. I love the
Mhm.
title, like it's clever.
Mhm.
But also had that thought of like, I don't know. I just thought this would sound like I thought that would be a poppier sound than a more like a almost acoustic set already kind of sound.
Yeah. Um, I don't know, obviously, because I haven't talked to Taylor Swift about it, if this is a reference or not, but like when the track list dropped, I like screamed at Dylan because The Fate of Ophelia is a line in a Grateful Dead song called Althea. And I was like, there's no way that like Taylor Swift, with all like, she is such an intentional artist
Mhm.
and she's such a deep researcher. Like, there's just simply no way that she doesn't
Have that
know that that
connection.
title, like, I guess it's a phrase, The Fate of Ophelia?
I hadn't heard it before as like as like an
Like
idiom
those
or
words
anything.
combined?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that she could not possibly have, like, missed that. And so I'm like, who's the Grateful Dead fan in her life? Who's listening to Althea with her? How does she know? Like, and that's a line that, like, really sticks with, I mean, Althea's, like, one of my favorite, and I would argue, like, lyrically, most profound Grateful Dead songs. So, I feel like there's a tie in there, and I'm gonna get to the bottom of it. If anybody has any connections to Taylor Swift and wants to ask her this one most innocent question anyone's ever asked Taylor Swift.
Yeah, and if anybody has those connections, I would also say that, like, English teacher, gym teacher thing was super cute. Please make a six-figure donation to the public school system in one of the states you live in. Maybe more.
Okay, I feel this super hard, and usually I'm like, artists don't owe us anything, and they
I don't know,
don't.
billionaires owe us something.
Yeah, but, like, at this point, I texted my friend Katie, who we went to Eras together, and Katie and I are, like, the same musically, like, we're like, Taylor Swift is such an outlier for us, but we, like, defend her fervently, and I was like, "Girl, ruh like, she's still not saying or doing anything, like, she's still just staying safe, and it feels like a really shitty time for a billionaire who cannot make a fucking misstep. Like, Taylor Swift has guaranteed millions of downloads and millions of views. Like, her engagement is so fucking high. If she just did or said anything, it would be so helpful. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to ignore that she's not.
Yeah, and I think that is, like, a valid thing to talk about when we talk about her art, because she is, I think, the prolific, like, female artist. Her and Beyoncé, like, I would put a giant prolific female artist of our time. I feel like they're both millennials. I'm realizing as I say this, I don't actually know how old Beyoncé is, but I also think
She's got to be in her early 40s.
oh, okay, that's elder millennial these days, though. So, yeah, so same generation, you
Yeah.
know? But I do think that, like, it is part of all of our work as citizens to positively impact this place we live, whether we do it for ourselves, for kids, whether they're our kids or other people's kids, or because we believe in the democratic project. Like, I'm not saying it's got to be the same motivation for everybody. I'm just saying I think we have an obligation. And if you, as your privilege increases, so too your obligation. And while I get that,
Yeah.
like, as we've talked about before with municipals, everything is different. In odd years, it's not all, we all vote on the same day and we have these several weeks of early voting. It very much varies in our own state and in different states. Like, so I get how it would be hard to do something universal, except tell people to register to vote, except tell people, like, hey, generally early voting starts in October. There are things you
Yeah.
could do with a platform that big that direct people to their own state board of elections website to find information and increase literacy. And
I think she does tell people to vote. I think she does, like,
she has
go
before, but
vote
she hasn't this year, and I
stuff.
guess that's what I'm saying is I know she's done like, in 2020, like, 75,000 new people registered to vote after she was,
Yeah,
like
because she was like, "Hey, go vote."
yeah, which is so cool.
Hey, have you guys ever heard of voting?
Build that into your calendar every year, man. You got a multi-million human platform. I don't know.
I would love for her to even be, like, less logistic about it if she wanted to be and just be like, "Hey, humanity matters, and here's how I feel about the way that other people are being treated right now."
Yeah. Yeah, I will say
I
also, like,
mean, anything.
kind of the other thing that I have been seeing around this album drop is some purity politics. You're paying attention to this and not paying attention to the flight headed to Gaza. And I just respectfully gotta say, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, to like use a shitty
Thank you.
metaphor. People deserve joy. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. So we're all making different concessions in our daily life in this imperfect system in which we find ourselves. And let people have something. That's all.
Yeah, the whataboutism that we constantly do, everybody does it all across the political spectrum, is so it should not be engaged with. We're having a conversation when we're having it, and it doesn't invalidate all the other conversations that we have. It doesn't mean that we're not doing anything because we're listening. You can be listening to Taylor Swift and
absolutely paying attention to what's happening to Greta Thunberg and the other people who have been taken off of the flotilla.
yes, I mean, literally listening to Taylor Swift and doing my city council stuff. Literally listening to Taylor Swift and doing your county chair stuff. Like, we're capable and we deserve it and we contain multitudes.
Exactly. Yeah. So we will not be tolerating any hate about the fact that we took 20 minutes to talk about fluff at the top of our episode. So sometimes it feels like there is so much that is going on in North Carolina politics that it's kind of a whirlwind. And this week, in addition to talking about Taylor Swift and her fun new album, we also wanted to talk about some of the North Carolina General Assembly nonsense.
Yeah, which is such a funny dichotomy. Like my internet right now is the flotilla, Life of a Showgirl, Medicaid. It's just like all over. We're just holding so much. So part of what is so confusing about what has been happening is that the state and federal government are both in crisis right now. And in North Carolina, we still don't have a budget. And as we've said many times before, that means that there aren't any raises or increases to existing budget items. They just carry over from last year if they get funded again.
Right. And this year, we also have the fun new twist of not having the Medicaid rebase fulfilled, which I like had not heard of before really until I think this week or like late last week when some of our friends and also Anderson Clayton, Democratic Party chair, like started talking about it.
Yeah. And I think we've like all kind of taken a crash course on this week because we've all had to. And I work in an agency that does some or did some Medicaid billing until we didn't pass a budget. So yeah, I feel like we're all kind of learning as we go.
So that's already, it sounds like, really like impacted your organization, which impacts the Henderson Buncombe like corner of Western North Carolina and maybe even more than that, right?
So our specific billing partnership with Medicaid was for Henderson County only, but I know that it's not the only program that's been affected in that way. The Healthy Opportunities pilot was a Medicaid billing pilot program that is being funded now, but we waited for months and it affected where we planned funds for this fiscal year, and we had to like move people's jobs around. Yeah, it's for sure had an impact.
Yeah, and it's so shitty. This and so many other things. I just think about like impacting the like, to use like a biblical phrase, like the least of these. Like this shit impacts the poorest Americans, the poorest constituents. And so this rebase is essentially what we call like a pot of money that is how Medicaid is funded. And states have to come up with a rebase plan in the year prior to when money gets spent so that they can plan for staffing and payouts and all the pieces that come with Medicaid reimbursements, which means hypothetically the rebase that would be done now but isn't being done is for 2026. Do I have that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So they fund it a year for the year ahead by estimating the cost based on a proposal from DHHS. So that is determined by like the enrollment growth and the needs of the specific folks who are using those services. Doesn't have to specifically be affected by those categories, but like if there are more children, that weights in a certain way. If there are more elderly, that weights in a certain way. So for them to understand like the demographics of the folks who are using it is part of it. And then it's also medical inflation So services and supplies start to cost more money over time, as we know. Prescription drugs, hospital care, changes in service use, new medical technologies can drive up costs, and policy and program changes can also impact it, which we know, and which is what is happening.
Yeah. And we do not have that now, unfortunately, because the Democratic governor and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services are at odds with our Republican controlled General Assembly about fully funding the proposed rebase amount. And so because they can't agree, there is no deal, which means that services have to be cut. And so things like medical home fees are going to see a 97% reduction. And acute care hospitals and nursing homes and psychiatric residential treatment facilities and intermediate care facilities will all have rate reductions of 10%. And I think it's pretty fair to say they're probably already severely underfunded in North Carolina.
Yeah. And a 10% reduction is a huge deal. Like that means decreasing services and outreach. So that means that people will be impacted by it. And I think that that's why it's really hard to convey messaging wise sometimes how important all of these pieces are, especially as we're like in an era where everything is important and urgent. But these decreases will have like very real tangible impacts. And it is because we can't come up with a solution in both chambers of the North Carolina General Assembly that are both Republican led. So this isn't even like a Democrats versus Republicans thing. This is that once again, the General Assembly that is led by Republicans in both chambers cannot come to a decision that both of them can agree on. And we are impacted. We, as the people of North Carolina, are negatively impacted by that. Again, same with the budget.
Yeah. And just like a very real world example of how this could hypothetically impact you. Say you're the parent of a young child. Say you've got a niece. I got a 4-year-old niece. She fell off a couch and broke her arm last year. In next year's world, in rural North Carolina where she lives, the nearest hospital to her might close because there's no funding. So her mama has to drive further and sit in a longer line in the hospital to get that baby's arm looked at. You care about your grandma who fell down and broke her hip in Charlotte, North Carolina? You're in an urban city center where there's more need and there's now less money to meet that need, which means longer wait times, which means more pain for people as they try to heal from whatever needs healing. Not to mention the higher cost in addition to the, physical.
Yeah, it really is like a straight line. Like we're watching it happen in real time, and there's not a whole lot that we can do about it other than demand accountability from the people who represent us. But like being out here, not in Raleigh, right? Like not in the systems that create these decisions, but being affected by them is just another like being the pawn in the game of people who can't come up with a decision, which is real. It's really wild. Like it should be just so easy. We're
Yeah.
funding Medicaid here. We're not like creating a new program. We're not like asking for the moon. We're asking to fund an existing program at the proposed rate given to you by your own Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally like a just do your job kind of thing. And
Yeah.
the unfortunate truth of it is that Republicans are so hell bent on cutting healthcare for people that they do not fucking care how much pain, both financial and physical, that they inflict on people. And I would urge everyone to call their legislators and like give them some polite shit about the pain that is going to be inflicted on North Carolinians because they cannot get their act together.
Yeah.
So, speaking of the North Carolina Senate, we also have Senate Leader Phil Berger, and even more cool news, who is threatening to make worse congressional maps, really saying the quiet part out loud this week and rigging the first district, which is the district that I live in and the most competitive seat in our state. So we use the Cook Partisan Voting Index to talk about the way a district leans. So when you hear people say stuff like this district is a D+1 or a D+10 or an R+5. That means there is, in like a D+10, a Democratic overperformance of 10 points above the national average. And CD1, Congressional District 1, has a CPVI, which I am going to ring the bell and say that means, again, Cook Partisan Voting Index. It has a CPVI of R+1, which means it is very reflective of like the median of where national politics is. And it's not, well, it's not heavily gerrymandered or as heavily gerrymandered as some of the other districts in North Carolina. It's all relative.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that backstory about how we get there is important because we're gonna keep talking about maps. Like, as we go through the next several years, this is gonna be a constant conversation, and we lean on the data from the Partisan Voting Index to determine what districts look like and for us to know how to interact with that information. So, like, I feel like people run around all the time like, "Oh, R+2, whatever." What is important for people who aren't, like, numbers people or, like, election data people to know is that the smaller that number, the closer to the median national average those voters are. So, like, if you have a D+3, which is, I think, what Charlotte's congressional district is, that's way bluer than the average of the country. If you have an R+1, like Congressional District 1 in North Carolina, that's pretty average. That's pretty that votes in alignment with how most of the country votes, which is the only real average that we have to use.
Mhm.
So that's why we use it. And what we're concerned about is that the General Assembly will try to change the district of what is comparatively probably the fairest and most competitive district in North Carolina. When Berger was asked about a rumor that Trump had asked him to rig maps here in North Carolina, he said that wasn't the case. But then he continued on to say that he was open to rigging maps. And Destin Hall, who is the Speaker of the House, declined to give comment on this, which was probably wise. I don't know why. Imagine somebody being like, hey, did the president like get some unethical advance from you? And you being like, he didn't, but if he did, I'd be into it. Like, why would you say that? That's
Also, like,
crazy.
what that he didn't, in all likelihood, means is that one of the president's people called Senator Berger's people, and a conversation was had, like, that got to both parties in all fucking likelihood. Like, obviously speculation, but I think it's fair to say that there wouldn't have been reporting on the possibility that Berger would redraw the congressional maps if there wasn't something like pretty reasonable that somebody has information about. And I just, to be like, I'm open to rigging the maps. It's like, do you know what rigging means? Like, you did just admit to like, I'm gonna fuck with this, like, as opposed to we're gonna do this fairly.
Yeah, and I don't think he said, I mean, obviously he didn't say we're open to rigging maps, but he said we will redraw if we feel like we need to. We have had redrawn maps.
Twice since I've lived back in North Carolina since we moved here again from Los Angeles, and we've only been here 4 years again.
Yeah, I mean, it's been
Like,
every
that's every
election
2
cycle.
years. Like,
Yeah. I think we should have a speculation jar where, like, if we if we, like, speculate too hard, but, like, we have to do it because the speculation is good, we should be allowed to, but we should have to, like, put a dollar into a jar.
I can get behind that. A Carolina Abortion Fund speculation jar.
Yes, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I feel like there are some times where I'm like, "Okay, this is anecdotal. This is my suspicion, but, like, run with me here." The chances to me of the National Republican Party not looking at North Carolina are 0.
They would be so dumb not to,
Yes,
but,
yeah, like, there's
clearly
no
they
way
are
that
dumb about some things,
not strategy, though.
unfortunately. And so one thing that we also wanted to touch on is how they're talking about doing the congressional maps again when they cannot legally touch our state maps. And still,
Yeah.
like, our state legislative and our local maps, those, because they redrew them so much and so fucked up. Like, over the past several years, like, North Carolina court had ruled, you gotta wait till the next census to do this shit again. And so it really seems, and they did just redraw those congressional maps. Again, not once, but twice. And I
Yeah.
know because when I lived in Mitchell County, I was half of that time in the Madison Cawthorn district, and then I got drawn out of it before 2022. And then I moved to Granville County in 23, and I was in Congresswoman Valerie Fouché's district in 23. And then in 24, not only am I in Congressman Davis, that's just a little tiny bit in Granville, and the rest of us is
Right.
in 13.
Right. When I was looking at this story, I was like, oh, yeah, Granville. And then I was like, oh, nope, I don't know. I don't know which one Liz is in.
Yeah.
And
It's like
that's
literally
also
the city of Oxford got stuck into District 1 because they didn't want the Democratic voters in Oxford in 13.
Mhm. And I think that's also something that's important for us to acknowledge about, like, the expectation of the general public to know what district they live in. Like, people sometimes will be like, "I feel so bad, I don't even know who my reps are," and I'm like,
Not your
"How?"
fault.
It's not your fault. It's intentional that, like, things move around all the time, that we don't build relationships with our representatives because our shit changes every couple years lately, and we're busy as hell, and there's all this information all the time. Even if you lived in a universe where you had, like, a consistent expectation of what your district was and who your representation was, there would still be a lot going on. But imagine expecting your average human being with shit to do to, like, get on the Board of Elections website for their county and, like, see who represents them by their address. It's just too much.
Yeah. It's like consistently a service I offer to people I love for
Mhm.
free to be like,
Mhm.
hey, would you like some help knowing what districts you're in when you have elections, who's running, why I think you should vote for the Democrat or in rare cases the independent, because I know that it is unreasonable. And I wish everybody was like a high information voter. I do. Like, I would love to live in a world where we all spend at least 30 minutes thinking about our ballot before we cast it. But I also don't think that's necessarily reasonable. And it may even be kind
Mhm.
of classist
Mhm.
to ask that of folks when we don't even have a fucking federal holiday to go vote.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's, like, more fuckery around voting happening with the Republican-controlled state board of elections just this past week, and I think as we get into what this is, what this change is that we're about to talk about, it's important to talk about how nutty this timing is because while, like, we haven't had elections yet here in Granville, our early voting starts October 16th. There are plenty of places across this state that had September voting or are finishing up voting in the middle of October. And this week, the State Board of Elections said, oh, that poll observer program that we decided was either illegal or not allowed in odd years, even though it is both allowed and needed in even years. And so this year, this past week, they like turned on a dime and said, "Oh, now during odd years, it's fine for you to have a poll observer program. We don't care that like other people have already been voting and it's like only part of the state that still hasn't had voting started. Dear Republicans and Democrats, you have 2 weeks to figure out an indoor and outdoor poll observer program." And I'll put a dollar in the speculation jar for this, but I think it would be assuming a lot of good intent from the Republicans on the state board of elections to think that they didn't give their people a heads up about this.
Sure. Yeah, I think that there are gonna be a lot of changes to the way that elections look because there is a Republican controlling the Board of Elections in every single county in North Carolina right now. Is that right? There must be.
Yes, that is correct. Because the Republicans control the state board of elections in every county where there is a 5-seat board on the county board of elections. Republicans get 3 and Democrats get 2. And you have to be Republican or Democrat, I believe. I don't believe you can be independent and serve At least it hasn't seemed like that's a possibility here in Granville, that I think you do have to have a partisan identity.
Let me Google it. Can you serve on Board of Elections as an independent in NC? No,
Which, like, I
you
also
can't.
think is silly. Like, I feel
That's
like there are
crazy.
plenty of qualified people for whom, like, the partisan politics, like, I think you should pick a side, and I think we can all tell what side I think you should pick. But, like, I also believe there are plenty of independents who care enough about the integrity of elections that, like, they could do a good job serving on these boards.
And there's all kinds of reasons to be independent. I mean,
Yeah.
all kinds of reasons. I'll think about this. I might cut it, but I know someone who's like an active member of our Young Dems or like whatever Young Progressives who is independent because he worked for the county for a long time. And he was like, I don't want them to know which way I think about stuff. Like for a lot of people, it's a privacy issue.
That's so sad for like, I wish it didn't feel like that was important for people, but I get that it does. It just
Yeah.
it makes me sad. Like, where you
That
work,
people
like,
feel
you should be able
unsafe.
to have a political opinion regardless of where you work.
Yeah.
But all that to say, as far as I am aware of, the political party that we're aligned with is making every effort to properly train people to be poll observers. And it's really important that we have these poll observer programs, especially now that we're allowed to have it this year across the state, including in Granville. There were of some polling locations that directed husband and wife pairs who came in to vote together to the same place to cast their ballot. And that is explicitly not allowed. A poll worker must give each of those individuals the opportunity to have their own individual ballot filling out space.
Are you talking about paper ballots?
Yeah, we have paper ballots here in Granville. Do you vote electronically?
Yeah. I haven't used a paper
Oh,
ballot in forever.
we've only used paper ballots in
Huh.
Granville.
Interesting. Wait, in generals?
Yeah. Yeah, in 23 and 24.
Huh. Why?
You know, that's a great question.
Huh.
I don't know the answer to it, but it's a great question.
That's interesting. I feel like there's so much more room for error on a paper ballot, but maybe that's not accurate.
Yeah, that I'm not really sure of, because also feel like we had issues with voting machines in both
Right.
24 and
Yeah,
2020.
people are like anti-voting machines sometimes.
And maybe that's it. Our population does skew a little older, so there might
Okay.
just be such clear sentiment here that this is what is preferable and better,
Hmm.
that that's how it's been, but I am honestly speaking in a little bit of ignorance there.
That's so interesting. That took me so long when you were telling that story to put that together. Like I was like, they put two people in the same electronic voting booth. Like, why would they do that? But I see what you're saying now. Where you go and sign out, there's like two boards on either side, and they're
Mhm.
putting them in the same one as couples.
Yeah, or like there's a little like it's like say like a tripartite like circle that's broken up into like three
Yeah.
pieces with
Okay.
dividers, and
Uh-huh.
that in one of those singular divided spaces you might have a husband and wife couple with two paper ballots who have both been directed to a singular space, and we should not be directing people to a singular space together. They must get the option to cast their vote in separate places.
Glad to be having these conversations out loud because you and I both work so deeply in local politics that I think it's important to highlight this stuff that like we still don't know. Like we don't understand the rhyme or reason behind who gets what kind of voting equipment or why it's not universal throughout the state or what the benefit is to either one. I know that there have been discussions about both of them, but I mean, that's been forever. Like Hanging Chad times, I'm sure. That's the first one I remember.
Yeah, that's the first one I remember being, like, cognizant of at all. Our board, for the most part, and I mean, I think I can only really fairly speak for the Democrats who sit on the board of elections, but I see the people that we appointed trying so hard to, like, maintain election integrity and keep people informed. And even when we had a Democratic chair of our Board of Elections last year, she would not just come to the Democratic meetings and give us updates. She would go to the Republican meetings, like not just if they asked her to, she would affirmatively offer to help keep them informed, even
Mhm.
though their people could have done it because she was the chair. She made that effort. And I do not see that effort replicated now that there has been changeover. And it's so important to get this voting info out to people. I know last year we have a couple of those big big light things that go in a parking lot
Yeah.
to provide bright light, but that can travel, that are a mobile giant light post.
Yeah.
And we literally had to have a messaging campaign that was like, you usually see these at this early voting site. You will not see them this year. It is not because anyone is trying to engage in voter intimidation. It is because we lent them to Western North Carolina.
Mhm.
And the effort to get that information out to make sure that people didn't think that anyone was trying to restrict the voting that is happening after dark.
Yeah.
And I just, oh, it's a lot. It's really a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, deep diving to do for sure. I also think that we have probably wrung it dry at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would encourage everybody to check out their county board of elections website for your most up-to-date voting information. They will have updated it at this time for 2025. It will have happened. I know ours, we just had polling locations change and things like that literally as recently as September 24th. And our Granville County Board of Elections web pages have been updated with information. So it is, there are places to go to get this information. Do not use ChatGPT to find this information, especially the free version, because it will pull old website data for you and you will get outdated information. So use your Google or your Bing or whatever the fuck other search engine, but that is my recommendation for anyone who needs to look up voting information.
I just looked up mine because we don't have elections this year and I was curious what it would say. And it says, reminder, there are no upcoming elections in 2025. Great job, Henderson County Board of Elections. Thanks.
Nice.
So if you don't have any, you should still look and just make sure that there isn't a single one that you're missing.
And remember that if you live outside of city limits and can't vote inside city municipal elections anyway, you really do still have the power to impact these local elections. In Granville County, we have about 14,000 people who are eligible to vote in the municipal elections this year. In 2023, less than 19% of them did. And so every
Crazy
conversation
small
that you
number.
have with a friend who can vote or who can help spread the word or helping people make plans,
Yeah.
I get it. Working people, it's hard to find the time, especially if you don't have multiple late voting days or you have only one Saturday voting opportunity available. But
Yeah.
there are tons of ways that just talking about making a plan can really positively impact turnout. And so that would just be my pitch for even if you can't vote locally this year, that's not a reason to not be involved.
Yep. For sure.
Do we want to switch over to Even Art is Political?
Yeah. What you got for us today?
So I have a poem by Threa Almontaser. Is also an NC State poetry grad. She was in the
Cool.
MFA program a couple years behind when I did it, and is a Yemeni American poet. And I don't know her personally, but she's really lovely. And her book, The Wild Fox of Yemen, is really beautiful. It's a beautiful book. And
Uh,
it's a fun size, and her lines are long. And a lot of times people who don't write short poems, their books get bigger like this to accommodate the lines. And so anyway, this poem is called When White Boys Ask to See My Hair. My hair is not taking any visitors right now. My hair was used as a banner on the moon. My hair is belly dancing on an auntie's tabletop. My hair fell off the long line on Mount Everest trying to take a selfie. My hair is flipping off an ICE raider after he barges into her favorite deli, arresting her neighbors. My hair is Medusa's second cousin, the strands slithering along your throat. Avert your gaze for your own good. My hair was captured from the exotic Manu wilderness and caged for a popular circus show. My hair is ducking beneath a desk, trying to recall the drills, math sheets falling in a white rain. My hair escaped an arranged marriage to sail the Red Sea with a crew of burly pirates. She is busy battling maritime brigands and trying not to get lost. My hair is under siege in Yemen, her home recently bombed, her children buried under the rubble. I am not entirely sure if she will make it out alive. My hair was abducted by aliens. Rumor has it they spun her into a star. That might be her there, winking down at you. My hair was mauled on a Tanzanian safari. I found a few leftover curls flossed between the caracal's fangs. My hair joined a deep rooted Bedouin tribe. She enjoys feeding nomadic camels from her palm, became the Sheikh's third wife, and sings ancient poetry into campfires. She is happy. I don't think she is coming back. And again, that's when white boys ask to see my hair.
I love that.
That's a good poem, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going back through it. Yeah, I like how visual it is.
Yeah,
Seeing
if
those
it's not
things.
clear, like Threa is a hijabi woman. And so she, wears a headscarf, and this poem is talking about that. Her poetry really does straddle like Yemeni and American culture in a lot of ways in this book. There are a lot of poems that I love in this book that I did not choose because I do not know Arabic and did not feel like I could do justice to them, like reading them aloud. But they're really beautiful, and so, I mean, it's a great book, and I would totally recommend it. I was like, that was one that I
Oh,
could read and really
yeah.
liked. And she refers in her work to, like, a real sense of alienation, the hostile attitude of fellow Americans after 9/11.
Mhm.
And in many of her poems, she criticizes conventional ideas about femininity in light of the violence that occurs in all kinds of situations all over the world. She also really deals with a lot of, like, the vulnerability of the body facing ideological oppression and writes really wonderfully. And if anybody didn't know, it's incredibly rude to, like, ask a hijabi woman to, like, see their hair. So, like, don't fucking do it.
Yeah. We should just say that, I guess. Although y'all should be able to figure out from the context clues of the fact that they're wearing them that you shouldn't ask them to take them off.
Pretty much.
However, the bar is in hell, so we'll make it clear.
New episode title.
You want to? We should call it that.
I'm making a note. I do think that's funny.
Yeah, I feel so grateful to learn all of these poems. I wish that we should maybe like I'm gonna make playlists. We should make a reading list of all of the poems that you've brought on so that people have a space to go like access them. So I think that would be cool.
That
Maybe we
would
could
be
put it
cool.
in like a link tree or something
I
because I
like
don't want
that
to
idea.
forget them.
Yeah, and I think every poem that I've picked is available online too, because we all know, like, everybody cannot buy a million books. Like, I have most of the books that include these poems, but I don't expect everybody else to have a massive poetry collection.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing it. We have covered so much in this episode that I think really the only call to action that I have is for us to make those calls to our representatives and our senators, tell them that we need them to come to the table. We need Medicaid to be fully funded. They are simply choosing to not do their jobs right now. The job is hard. The work that they signed up for is hard, and they should be doing hard work because we deserve that as the people who pay them, who hire them, to whom they are accountable. It shouldn't be easy. They should have to do hard work. And for them to be able to leave when the work gets hard is not okay. Nobody else gets to do that. They certainly should not get to do that. They should be like the last people on the list of people who are allowed to leave when things get hard because they should be accountable to all of us. So for them to feel like they are being held accountable by all of us. It is important that we continue to let them know that we're watching them. So even if it doesn't feel like you're making any shift when you put that effort in, it's in the accountability that we're expecting from them. So if we all do it, it does make a big difference. You should know, like, your congressional aides by now. They should know you also.
It absolutely does make a difference, and if you need any more push to, like, figure out who your congressmen and senators are and make those calls, I would say, remember, they make $175,000 a year and have a significantly subsidized government healthcare, and
And you
they
pay
have
for
not
it.
right, and you pay for it, and they have also simultaneously chosen not to raise the national minimum wage from 7.25. So if those people can make that
The
good
statewide
six-figure
minimum wage.
income, they can work hard.
Yes, that is
So,
correct. They can do the job that they have to do 7 months a year.
yeah, they get paid during this government shutdown, by the way, unless they opt out of it, and even then their opting out of it is just them getting paid later when the government starts up again.
So, this is interesting too. I'm glad that we're, like, having these conversations out loud because we both work in local politics. Like, both of our jobs are very local.
Yeah, and I think part of my point around our congressional representatives and senators making so much money is both the disparity in how much they make and what the minimum wage in this country is, and also the fact that, like, they get paid they can, as government workers, be some of the few government workers who actually still get paid during a shutdown
Mhm.
unless they opt for it to be withheld, which just means they're gonna get paid at a later date because the government
Right.
is going to turn back on. So there is something to me that is a little performative about these letters that are like, "Withhold my pay, I am so disappointed." Yeah, so just call them, bug them, tell them do their fucking jobs.
Yes. Thank you so much, y'all, for joining us on this episode of the Foxfire Dispatch. If today's discussion lit a spark, you can help us fan the flame by sharing this episode with your neighbors, dropping us a note on social media, emailing us at thefoxfiredispatch@gmail.com with your questions, stories, and ideas for bringing about a better.
We put out episodes weekly on Fridays, and if you like our content, you can find us at the Foxfire Dispatch on Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky, and Foxfire Dispatch on TikTok and Twitter or the Deep Dark Bad Place.
Until next time, remember that we are who we're waiting for and go get in some good trouble.